You are now listening to the Region 10 Report with your host, Susanne Posel from OccupyCorporatism.com, where the alternative media gets their news. This show will expose the elite domination plan, disinfo agents, propaganda, corporate control, and the UN plan to strip the world of its freedom and the U.S. of its Constitution. This is the Region 10 Report with Susanne Posel, bringing you the real truth behind the news.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Region 10 Report. This is episode number 14. The Region 10 Report is broadcast on American Freedom Radio, 4 to 5 p.m. Central on stations all across the globe, as well as Prepper Podcast Network, UCY.TV, iTunes podcast downloads, just type in the Region 10 Report, Spreaker.com, Shoutcast, and Blog Talk Radio. You can listen to us as well on previous episodes, if you'd like, on radio.occupycorporatism.com. New articles are posted daily on our website, occupycorporatism.com. We post about 6 days a week, so keep in touch, and you can sign up for our RSS feed. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm your host, Susanne Posel. And usually my co-host David Posel comes with me, but today I have kind of kicked him to the curb because I have an amazing special guest. His name is Brandon Turbeville. He is the author of several books. He comes out of Florence, South Carolina. He holds a BA from Francis Marion University and is the author of 4 books: Codex Alimentarius, The End of Health Freedom, 7 Real Conspiracies, 5 Cent Solutions, and Dispatches from a Dissent, Volume 1. He is a staff writer for Activist Post and has published over 200 articles dealing with a wide variety of subjects, including health, economics, war, government corruption, and civil liberties. Brandon Turbeville also maintains a constant focus on solutions and a way forward, which is exactly why I brought him on the show. Because I don't want to scare you guys. I don't want you to be like deers in the headlight. I want you guys to know that there are ways that we can combat all of this. He has a radio program on UCY.TV, as well as I do. His show is called Truth on the Tracks, which functions as both a news roundup and a hub for networking, solutions, and activism. His books can be found at falseflagproductions.blogspot.com. Turbeville has maintained a backup blog containing his articles, interviews, and broadcasts at brandontuberville.blogspot.com. I'd like to go ahead and bring up Brandon. Brandon, are you there?
I'm here, Suzanne. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, no problem. I'm so glad that you came along with me. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm hearing some clicks on the phone. I didn't know if we got disconnected or not, but we're still here.
Okay. Awesome. So we are going to explain to everyone what Codex Alimentarius is and why we should care. So go ahead and for everyone listening, Brandon, what is Codex Alimentarius?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things floating around on the internet which confuse a lot of people, and one of the ideas that has confused a lot of people is that Codex Alimentarius is a law, and it is not a law. Codex Alimentarius is actually an organization at the international level. It's the standard-setting organization under the Food and Agricultural Organization, essentially under the United Nations spectrum, the international trade spectrum with the WTO and so forth. Codex was created in 1963, so it's not recent within the last 20 years. This has been around for a while. And it was created under the Food and Agricultural Organization, the World Health Organization, and the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And again, as I said, it's the standard-setting organization for trade, essentially. It's enforced by the WTO. So the standards that it sets have to do with virtually everything that human beings can consume, whether it's food, different alterations to food, or vitamin and mineral supplements. Now, notably, it does not set standards for pharmaceuticals. That's left to the laws of the jungle. Pharmaceuticals aren't regulated in that sense as vitamin and mineral. Food supplements and genetically modified food and non-genetically modified food are regulated. So just to give you a brief mention of Codex itself, even though it was started in 1963, it has a history that goes all the way back to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, right? It was called the Codex Alimentarius Austriacus, which was essentially the food standards that were used for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the Codex Alimentarius, by the way, is only, it sounds scary, it's Latin for food code. So this is what Codex does. But from 1897 to around 1911, this existed in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and it moved on and became even bigger, and became called the Codex Alimentarius Europus in 1954, and it stayed that way for about 4 years. This was the standard-setting organization for most of Europe, and then they got to work quickly on what we know now as Codex Alimentarius in 1963, which encompasses the entire world. It's made up of, at this point, at least 182 countries. So it's not the entire world, virtually the entire world.
Is the U.S. involved with Codex Alimentarius?
Yes. As far as I know, I think we can safely say the entire developed world is a part of Codex Alimentarius. I mean, even Somalia has joined. So it's pretty thorough and all encompassing.
So let me ask you, how is it would be under the USDA, correct? Because they handle our food safety standards. So how is the USDA working with Codex Alimentarius?
Well, it's going to be connected to several different organizations. The USDA is a part of it in some respects. So is the FDA. So is the EPA. Essentially, all the regulatory bodies in the United States are working with Codex Alimentarius. In fact, you can even go to the EPA website, and if you've got a day to sit around and search, you can find the re-registration and eligibility documents, which will be much easier to find now that I just told you. You can find those documents, and it says on that website that the stated goal is to harmonize its regulatory principles with that of Codex Alimentarius. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason there are so many different groups, there are so many agencies that are working with Codex Alimentarius is because it's divided in that way. USDA is going to handle food safety, FDA handles the vitamin and mineral supplements, the EPA handles various chemicals, and there's always some bleed over into these areas. But the stated goal is to harmonize with Codex.
So all of our standards by which we regulate food, dissemination of food, whether or not food is healthy for us or not, the control of food, as far as nutrients and minerals and what's safe for everyone to eat, at least in our country, in the U.S., as well as globally. But let's just focus on the U.S. since we're here. But, let me take that back a little bit. We have listeners all across the globe, so let me scratch that and say let's talk about this globally. But for the intended purposes of the United States, Codex Alimentarius, like when I have written a couple of articles, when I go to the USDA website, I was surprised that they said all of their food standards are based on Codex Alimentarius. So then I had to go look up what Codex Alimentarius was. That's how I learned. I was like, well, okay, what is this? That the UN has these safety standards, these guidelines that we're following is absolutely terrifying to me. What do you think about that?
It is, especially when you have for instance, we all know that the FDA is bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical companies, right? This is I don't really think this is up for debate. I mean, with Michael Taylor now being in charge of the FDA, going back and forth between Monsanto and the FDA, genetically modified food companies, pharmaceutical companies own the FDA, and you can see what it's doing to our food supply and our food safety here in the United States. Now, you could just translate that to an international scale. The corruption, the greed, the destruction of food safety, the destruction of natural foods, of access to natural foods, all of this can be multiplied on the international scale, because that's what Codex is. It's bought and paid for by the same interest. So in fact, you can look at, to get an example of what Codex will do, you can almost go to any country. For instance, in genetically modified food, I would say the worst country is either the United States or Canada. And you can say, well, that's your example for the rest of the world under Codex Alimentarius guidelines. Vitamin and mineral supplements, one of the worst places is Europe. So go to Europe and look at that as your example of what Codex Alimentarius will do on an international scale. And that's broad and that's general, and that sounds like fear mongering, but it's really not.
Well, let me interject for a second, because last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, last year I was reading in the news that in the UK, vitamin supplements were basically outlawed.
Yeah, many of them are. Because of the European Union Food Supplements Directive.
And that goes hand in hand with Codex, right?
Yeah, that's almost a carbon copy of the Codex Alimentarius guidelines.
So when we're talking about food supplements, explain to people, or vitamin supplements rather, explain to people what they actually did to the supplements, because they basically made it so that they're ineffectual.
Well, they made some of them where they were ineffectual, and others they simply removed from the market. I have a list here that I can pull up in just a minute when I can get my hands on it, of some of the supplements that have been removed from the market, and there's hundreds of them in Europe that have been removed. So one of the techniques is to reduce the amount of available nutrition in the supplement. So I was telling you before, the supplements of vitamin D, for instance, have been reduced so much that you'd have to take so many pills just to get your daily intake of vitamin D that it wouldn't be the vitamin D that will hurt you, but you might have some kind of reaction to the gelatin in the capsules. You'd have to take so many of them that you might have a gelatin overdose,
right,
to the capsule coating before you actually get your vitamin D intake in. So that's part of what the EU Food Supplement Directive did, in that it reduced the amount of nutrition. And plus that even if you could take the amount that you needed to get your daily intake of vitamin D, for instance, how many bottles would you have to buy? I mean, you'd have to multiply this. You're talking 3-4 times the amount that you'd have to take normally. And
that gets very expensive when you're talking $30, $40, $50 a pop.
Right. And then, again, the whole issue of this is something that the Codex standards do when they have risk assessment, for instance, when they feed these animals tons of supplements until it kills them, and they say, oh, look, the supplements killed them. I've tried to point out to other people, you can put anything in your mouth to a level that it will kill you. If you take bread and you eat 40 loaves in a day, that might kill you. If you drink 40 gallons of water, that might kill you.
That's actually true. I think it was a couple of years ago, there was a gentleman, they were doing a radio contest, and he actually drowned because he drank so much water.
Yeah, so you can't blame the water. You can't say water is bad for you.
They might.
Yeah. So it's against logic to say it's the fault of the water. You drank 40 gallons. Sorry, you're an idiot. If you take vitamin C, if you take 40 bottles of vitamin C, yes, you can cause damage to yourself, but it's not vitamin C's fault. That's a mental health issue more than anything else. This is, I have a list here. I pulled this up. The vitamin and minerals positive and negative list. This is what the European Union Food Supplements Directive created. vitamins that are acceptable and the vitamins that are not acceptable. Now, I have on the negative list here, there are mainly they fixate on minerals because you can get an imbalance of various minerals that's easier than the vitamin and the vitamin supplements. But they have like boron, all forms of boron, which of course you need for calcium uptake. Boron is banned.
So this would add to like osteoporosis and bone deficiency and other kinds of problems that you would have, because this would be cumulative over the years. You would develop these problems like arthritis and things like that.
Right, and the immune system plays a big role in it too, because we have calcium ascorbate that's banned in the European Union. That's a type of vitamin C. For some people who can't, the stomachs don't agree with ascorbic acid, they take calcium ascorbate. This is banned. This is a vitamin C form that's banned.
Wow.
Copper, iron. There's 21 forms of iron that are banned in the European Union. Potassium, 21 different forms of potassium. Magnesium, 30 different forms of magnesium.
Now, I know I had a friend who had gastric bypass surgery last year, and she passed away, but she died of potassium deficiency because of the surgery, her body couldn't process potassium, and that's why she died. So I understood at that point, oh my God, I didn't realize how important some minerals are. You eat a banana or two a day, and you think, oh, well, I'm keeping my legs from getting cramped up at night, but you don't realize how everything fits together. We're coming up on a break, Brandon. And when we get back on the other side, I want to continue this conversation. So guys, stay seated, because what you eat is very important, and we're going to discuss that.
Just look at us. Everything is backwards. Everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health. Lawyers destroy justice. Universities destroy knowledge. Governments destroy freedom. The major media destroys information. And religions destroy spirituality. I think there's more to know here.
All you ever hear about in this country is our differences. That's all the media and the politicians are ever talking about, the things that separate us, things that make us different from one another. That's the way the ruling class operates in any society. They try to divide the rest of the people. They keep the lower and the middle classes fighting with each other so that they, the rich, can run off with all the money. A fairly simple thing happens to work. If you know anything different, that's what they're going to talk about. Race, religion, ethnic and national background, jobs, income, education, social status, sexuality, anything they can do, keep us fighting with each other so that they can keep going to the bank.
Are you tired of going to the same news websites and sharing stories with your friends only to find out later that it was a propaganda piece or something from a disinformation network? Have you been to OccupyCorporatism.com? Occupy Corporatism is one of the very few independent news sources that certifies their information and provides all of the source documents, so you can be sure that what you're reading is the real thing and not just an opinion piece by the controlled alternative and mainstream media. We offer 100% original articles and a troll-free atmosphere, so you can feel comfortable knowing that time you spend with us will be time well spent researching facts and avoiding trolls. Come by Occupy Corporatism 24 hours a day to get the latest news and the facts that other media outlets just refuse to cover. That's OccupyCorporatism.com. You can also visit radio.occupycorporatism.com to listen to all of our episodes of the Region 10 Report with Susanne Posel, the chief editor and investigative journalist of Occupy Corporatism. Don't forget to visit Occupy Corporatism on Facebook to leave your comments, suggest news stories, or leave us a news tip. We appreciate all of our loyal listeners and readers. We've reached over 2 million smart people just like you. So come by OccupyCorporatism.com and get the real truth behind the news. Leave the propaganda behind.
would your life be like if you woke up each morning with new vitality, feeling better than you have in years, and you noticed a difference in your sleeping patterns, blood sugar levels, and had a sense of well-being overall? There's something that is changing thousands of people's lives, and you could be one of them. It's called Heart and Body Extract. Sharon Harris, co-creator of Heart and Body Extract, talks about the positive effects of Heart and Body Extract.
What happens with the formula Heart and Body Extract is it's giving the body the necessary vitamins, minerals, amino acids, enzymes, and phytonutrients so the body will heal itself. And yes, the body does have the ability to balance blood pressure, balance cholesterol, clean and unclog the arteries. It can also work on balancing the circulation for diabetics. So the body is an amazing thing. It simply needs some help so it has the tools to heal itself.
Heart and Body Extract gets results. To order your 2-month supply, call now, toll free at 866-295-5305. Order online at hbextract.com.
Denying the times of the love were at ease, when at odds with establishment, iron wore upkeep, while asking one question for answering it first, as the central intelligence eats the whole world. Tell me how you feel.
Hello, everybody. We are back, and we are talking with Brandon Turbeville. Brandon, before we went on the break, we were talking about the scariness of Codex Alimentarius, and then specifically, we had moved on to supplements. Supplements are really big with everyone right now, and people are taking them. I know that when you actually eat the food, and when you eat the organic raw food, you're getting the nutrients that you need. Supplements are great if you can't actually get to the real raw food. But even when you steam food, you lose 40% of the nutrients. So organic food is very important to us. But how does Codex Alimentarius deal with organic food?
Well, it does that in a number of ways. And just as a quick aside, I will mention the irradiation aspect, since we've blanketed the entire Earth 3 or 4 times over with radiation, whether it's from Chernobyl or Fukushima or just from one of the thousands of nuclear tests. But that's not enough for some people. Apparently, we need to radiate our food as well, because this a lot of food comes through these conveyors, essentially, where they bathe it in radiation. It's not to keep your food safe, of course. It's to cover up the garbage, the blood, the feces, all that kind of stuff in the food, because of disgusting manufacturing conditions not from small farmers or small operations, of course, but from major operations. So the answer is to bathe it in radiation so you can eat it and not notice the garbage that's in your food. And the level of radiation was already unbelievably high that was used here in the United States, and the rest of the world. But Codex has standards set for food irradiation at 10 kilogray. That was actually before 2003. That was around 2002. That they set the limit for food irradiation at 10 kilogray. Now, that is the equivalent of 330 million chest x-rays.
Wow.
That's for your food. That's what you can consume. Now, they've actually got loopholes in it where you can irradiate the food in an unlimited fashion. Those loopholes exist, and they're pretty obvious that they're right there. But in terms of organic versus genetically modified, for instance, the Codex Alimentarius, this is one of the the opportunities that you can say Codex is not as bad as the United States, but they're almost as bad, because Codex uses substantial equivalence. That's the risk assessment method used for genetically modified foods. Now, they even mention in their own guidelines that risk assessment is a horrible method to use for whole foods, because it only assesses the risks and not the benefits, and it's very difficult to determine what's a lethal dose of food and what's no observable effect of food because it's a basic necessity, and so forth. Now, they use risk assessment for vitamin and mineral supplements. So even though it's a lousy method to use for whole foods, when they use it for genetically modified foods, it's perfectly fine when you use it against vitamin and mineral supplements, and you determine that they're very dangerous and that they should be banned. But not genetically modified foods. It's completely turned 180 degrees. And they acknowledge that it's not a great method, so essentially they ignore the risks when they evaluate genetically modified food. Now, the substantial equivalence method is an assumption. It says that the genetically modified food is acceptable, safe, and as long as it's substantially equivalent to traditional food. That's
the argument with genetically modified food. I've seen that in the mainstream media recently. Hey, with the Stanford, study that I'm sure you've seen, that hey, organic food and genetically modified food, they're basically the same. So why pay the higher prices? Just go ahead and eat GMO.
Right. I know NPR was pimping that study day in and day out. And calling people foodies and trendies, which is ironic for NPR listeners, but they're calling them trendies for wanting to eat food that's not genetically modified, spliced with another species, or produces its own pesticide, for God's sake. But the substantial equivalence method is slightly better, but not much, than the FDA method, which is substantial similarity. Right, so it doesn't have to be equivalent; it has to just be similar. And it's not exactly explained what it means to be similar, except that they say it has to be in the normal range of nutritional value, of variation in terms of effects. But substantial similarity, substantial equivalence, it's basically the same thing, only one is taking the lead more than the other. So that is the position of Codex Alimentarius on genetically modified food. So it's A-OK. Now, the problem, again, is that Codex standards are enforced by the World Trade Organization. So if a member country sues another member country under the WTO trade dispute settlement apparatus, then the member country that is Codex compliant automatically wins. And the WTO doesn't actually fine the loser, but it allows the victor to sue the loser and fine the loser, and the loser has to pay massive fines in terms of trade dispute settlement. So it can be very expensive for a country. Now, the WTO probably skims a little bit off the top of that, and so does the Trade Dispute Settlement Court, and of course the prosecuting country. This could be multiplied many times over. For instance, if the United States, which is full of GM food, wanted to sue another nation, we'll just say Somalia, for producing non-genetically modified food, or in making it some way easier for that food to be shipped out, marketing it to other countries and so forth. They could sue them for unfair trade practices. And Somalia would have to pay the United States the fine. Well, if Brazil was not Codex compliant, if Guatemala was not Codex compliant, they could sue these countries as well and multiply that times 3, the amount of money that gets shipped back over to the prosecuting country. And, of course, other nations can join in as well and just have this one big giant team of pro-GM countries suing non-GM countries. And that's probably, in all reality, not the way it's going to go in terms of implementing Codex guidelines. No, again, here, we virtually have that now. We have the worst. We have the Codex guidelines in terms of genetically modified food over here now. Canada has it as well. They had it 10 years before we did. But other nations are going to fare harder in terms of GM food than even we would, if that's as far as it goes. There's actually a way because of the way that Codex evaluates vitamin and mineral food supplements in terms of the nutritional level being dangerous, whether it's vitamin C, vitamin B, and we could go into the whole way that they evaluate vitamin and mineral supplements, but because they essentially determine that the nutrition itself is dangerous, they can also turn that around.
Right. Let me mention this to everyone listening, and then I want you to comment on it. The World Health Organization and the FAO has estimated that restricting nutrition would cause a minimum of 3 billion human deaths. And since we need nutrition and minerals and vitamins in our chemical body, our bodies are biochemical, we need these chemicals in order to function properly. They're thinking, oh, well, this serves the depopulation agenda because we could kill at a minimum 3 billion humans by just giving them nutrient-deficient food.
Yeah, and there's actually a way, though, but if Codex chooses to go this route, and I suspect that it will after it gets its total GM food agenda through, this will be a few years in advance, so this is what we have to look forward to, in that it describes vitamin and minerals as toxic substances, essentially nutrition is dangerous, then the food, GM food itself, if it possesses a certain level of nutrition, that nutrition could be legislated out of the food. Now, this could be used to get organic food fully off the market to begin with, but if you have a genetically modified potato that, has a certain level of nutrition, because this is the argument, right, that this genetically modified food can be modified to provide more nutrition for more people. That's hogwash. It does not do that. It doesn't feed more people. But if they argued that this genetically modified potato has more nutrition than the traditional potato, then essentially that potato itself could be removed, and you could be actually legislating nutritional levels in the foods that you're consuming and legislating them down, saying, oh, this food has too much vitamin C, we're going to require that these fruits have only half the amount of vitamin C, so we'll have to figure out a way to genetically modify the food with genetically modify the nutrition downward. So this is the truly Orwellian Brave New World direction that this could go.
Right. The UN Codex Alimentarius Commission has been working. Last year, they were working in Rome, Italy, on a draft Codex strategic plan for 2014-2019, where they're developing a science-based and globally applicable international standard for food and promote these standards in the member states that are compliant with them. And they want to use the maximum use of toxic chemicals in the food so that they can not only reduce the amount of nutritional value, but also enter in substances that would essentially kill off the population.
Yeah, and one of the methods that they can use is something that is called the Global Average Daily Diet. This was inserted into the food, vitamin and mineral supplements that they evaluated. There's a whole story behind that, but essentially they put it in the Global Average Daily Diet to reduce the level of nutrition that was available in the supplement even more than they had to begin with. But using that in terms of food, as you just said, they could place in the global average daily diet factor and bring in the global average daily intake of pesticides, right, in food. And of course, Canada, the United States, Europe, the third world, the amount of pesticides that we're consuming is off the charts. So if they take that as a global average daily consumption level, they can ratchet it up the level of consumption of pesticides that we're allowed safely. I put that safely allowed in scare quotes.
Now, they don't take into consideration the fact that each individual body reacts to chemicals in a completely individual way. not to be redundant, but even if you're in the same family, your brother or your sister or your aunt or uncle or mother or whatever, they may react to the exact same chemical in a different way, whereas you wouldn't get sick. They might get sick and die.
Right, and too, they use these type of things to lower the recommended daily allowances. See, most people don't understand that a lot of the acceptable daily intakes or recommended daily allowances, these are not levels that are set for optimum health. Right, your vitamin C levels are not set to the levels that would be optimum for your health. They're set at the very lowest level that if you did not consume this amount, you would get scurvy, right? So they're set at the level that would just prevent nutritional deficiency diseases. So you're getting the bare minimum. But they can even come back and ratchet that down even further because they use the logic. Now, this is not Codex, actually, that did this. This was the FDA. They use the logic that says, well, Americans are generally healthy people, and after the chorus of laughter subsides, Americans are generally healthy people, so they get by on a lower level of nutrition. So if they're healthy and they get by on a lower level of nutrition, then we could lower the base amount of nutrition that's required even further.
And that's just a combination for more need for health care. I mean, that's just what it appears to me. If you're not getting the nutrition, and we see that, well, the United States is one of the fattest nations in the world, I think. I've done a lot of articles on obesity. It wouldn't seem to me, I know that having a little bit of fat on your body is good if you're sick, actually in the hospital. If you're just a little bit overweight, it helps in the healing process because your body doesn't have to worry about keeping other functions. It can use the fat stores while your body's trying to heal itself. However, morbidly obese people, I think it's up to 40 or 42% of the population here in the United States. That is insane for them to even claim that. We're heading to a break, Brandon, and everyone, this is extremely important. Please stay with us all the way to the end because, like I said, what we eat defines how we live and our ability to function. So please don't go away.
Are chemtrail geoengineering programs changing our weather and destroying our environment? Why in the world are they spraying?
They want to create a storm in the southeast, then they'll start engineering out over the North Pacific. That's where the trailies will be.
Find out why critics are calling Why in the World Are They Spraying the most important film that is revolutionizing the environmental movement. Go to whyintheworldaretheyspraying.com for more information.
It's just going to get worse until the point where we're not going to be able to grow anything at all unless it's a Monsanto genetically modified, abiotic stress resistant seed.
Why in the World Are They Spraying? New international version with languages available from around the world. Go to whyintheworldaretheyspraying.com for more information.
It's all about money, and weather is another form of commoditizing, a way the Central Command Group can commoditize another form of our life.
Why in the world are they spraying?
And if you control the weather, you're going to control the planet. It's that simple.
Are you tired of going to the same news websites and sharing stories with your friends only to find out later that it was a propaganda piece or something from a disinformation network? Have you been to OccupyCorporatism.com? Occupy Corporatism is one of the very few independent news sources that certifies their information and provides all of the source documents, so you can be sure that what you're reading is the real thing and not just an opinion piece by the controlled alternative and mainstream media. We offer 100% original articles and a troll-free atmosphere, so you can feel comfortable knowing that time you spend with us will be time well spent researching facts and avoiding trolls. Come by Occupy Corporatism 24 hours a day to get the latest news and the facts that other media outlets just refuse to cover. That's OccupyCorporatism.com. You can also visit radio.OccupyCorporatism.com to listen to all of our episodes of the Region 10 Report with Susanne Posel, the chief editor and investigative journalist of Occupy Corporatism. Don't forget to visit Occupy Corporatism on Facebook to leave your comments, suggest news stories, or leave us a news tip. We appreciate all of our loyal listeners and readers. We've reached over 2 million smart people just like you. So come by OccupyCorporatism.com and get the real truth behind the news. Leave the propaganda behind.
Do you realize every day we are being put under constant stress from wireless radiation? What's worse is that you don't even know that it's happening. It puts as much stress on our body as if we had a constant viral infection, draining our energy and sapping our strength, or just making us irritable and fatigued. These wireless fields are being emitted from computers, microwaves, mobile phones, power lines, and any electrical appliance. Now there is a solution. A group of research engineers in New Zealand have come up with an active shielding device that shields you from wireless radiation at a cellular level. Blue Shield comes in 3 models, a household, portable, and USB that plugs into any computer. The great thing about Blue Shield is it is very affordable and guaranteed to last. A one-off purchase will see you being protected for years to come. Visit AmericanFreedomRadio.com and click on the Blue Shield banner. Blue Shield, brought to you by the VinnieEastwoodShow.com.
I don't like words that hide the truth. I don't like words that conceal reality. I don't like euphemisms. And American English is loaded with euphemisms because Americans have a lot of trouble dealing with reality. Americans have trouble facing the truth. So they invent a kind of a soft language to protect themselves from it. I'll give you an example of that. When I was a little kid, if I got sick, they wanted me to go to the hospital and see the doctor. Now they want me to go to a health maintenance organization. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that. The CIA doesn't kill anybody anymore. They neutralize people. The government doesn't lie. It engages in disinformation. Israeli murderers are called commandos. Arab commandos are called terrorists. Contra killers are called freedom fighters. Well, if crime fighters fight crime and firefighters fight fire, what do freedom fighters fight? They never mention that part of it to us, do they? Never mention that part of it.
Your natural organic herbal formula for heart health is Heart and Body Extract.
My name is Fan, and I'm 68 years old, and I live in Vermont. In the spring of 2003, I started to have problems with my heart. It felt like my heart was pounding, made me feel breathless. I tried many different things to try to get some help for myself. Nothing did anything.
Heart and Body Extract is very powerful, very effective, and works quickly.
I saw one of Sharon's ads and ordered Heart and Body Extract. I noticed a difference quickly, within days. The episodes became less frequent, and by a month had completely vanished.
Usually you find a 30-day or 60-day guarantee. Heart and Body Extract comes with a lifetime 100% ironclad money-back guarantee. Details at hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305. Call 866-295-5305. 866-295-5305 for Heart and Body Extract.
Fight the last freedom of imagination, or drowning pop culture of the biggest nation with armies of idiots brandishing brand names of one corporation, or conflagration, the most holy train wreck of all human history. Tell me how you feel.
Hey everybody, we are on the last stretch of the show, the Region 10 Report. We've been talking to Brandon Turbeville about Codex Alimentarius. And Brandon, I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about fluoride. Recently, I watched a documentary, in fact, last night. I learned some things about fluoride that I didn't realize. People's biochemical genes will make them susceptible to fluoride. Fluoride is an attractor of lead, so it magnifies, it attracts, it bonds the lead to itself and actually magnifies the effects of lead in the body. And it's we all know it's a toxin. It says so right there on the EPA website. that it's a toxin. So how does fluoride fit into Codex Alimentarius?
Well, before we went to break, I was mentioning, I'm going to answer that, but to go around it in a long way is to say that when I mentioned the genetically modified food situation where there might be and possibly will be a situation where nutrition is actually legislated out of the food, and to that, to a lot of people, that's going to sound absolutely crazy and paranoid. Well, to show you the logic of Codex Alimentarius, to show you that this is very much a possibility, you can look at the fluoride factor in the vitamin and mineral supplements evaluation, where vitamins like vitamin C, vitamin A are put into high-risk categories. I believe it's vitamin A that's put into a high-risk category. Fluoride is actually considered a nutrient, right? Because this is risk assessment that they're using to evaluate vitamin and mineral supplements. So by definition, they have to consider the vitamin or mineral as a toxin.
So industrial waste is considered a nutrient.
Right, because what they do is they do what a lot of people do. They confuse calcium fluoride and sodium fluoride. And calcium fluoride is the naturally occurring fluoride, which is still not good for you. There is no calcium fluoride deficiency that you can get. It still causes brittle bones and fluorosis and that sort of stuff. You want to stay away from it if you can. But sodium fluoride is the toxic mishmash of a variety of different chemicals, and that's what they put in your water, of course. And they mention fluoride in the Codex documents as fluoride, not calcium fluoride, sodium fluoride. So essentially they lump these in together. Sodium fluoride, the toxic waste, slides in under the calcium fluoride description. And so they actually have a daily acceptable level for fluoride here, and it's 3.2. I think this is, I don't know, I can't remember what the M stands for, but 3.2 for children, 3.8 for adults.
Parts per million.
That's it. That's right. Parts per million, which is a pretty high level actually.
Absolutely.
For even adults, but this level now, the people will say that it's set at a level, it's regulated by Codex. Fluoride's regulated, but keep in mind it's regulated in a setting where it virtually doesn't exist, which is supplements. It's regulated in supplements. Now I know they have fluoride pills, and they try to force them on children, and the dentist gives them out to different people. But find me a natural health practitioner or an individual who's just concerned about their health. They're taking vitamin and mineral supplements who wants a fluoride pill, right? I don't think they even sell them in health food stores. They shouldn't. But this is an area where they don't exist. Where it does exist and where it's not regulated is your water, and it is your toothpaste and your food. But it's okay because it's considered a nutrient. And it's not brought up by Codex in any other context. So if they will consider fluoride to be a nutrient and actually have an acceptable daily intake or upper safe level for fluoride, and at the same time create a positive and negative list that removes forms of vitamin C, then you're talking about the Orwellian nature of Codex right here. So this is something that you can look at as a hard example of the logic and the way that it's carried on by Codex. So don't believe for a second that they wouldn't create a situation where they could actually pull nutrition out of the food. They will. They're pulling nutrition out of the market in terms of supplements and putting toxins in the market in terms of fluoride.
That's amazing. Yeah, because if you grow a garden, you're arrested, and if you have raw milk sold, you're arrested. They're destroying all of the organic farms all over the nation. And I used to work on an organic farm. One of the things that I found interesting was the standards by, and we talked about this a little bit, but the standards for organic was based on USDA, which when I went to their website said that it was based on Codex Alimentarius. And I thought to myself, well, if this is true, then what good is the organic industry if they're paying all of this money to get that little label on their food, and the standards are eventually based on Codex Alimentarius and what they say about organics and what they say about nutrients and what we are allowed to eat and how much of it we're allowed to consume, then I'm only safe if I grow it myself.
Yeah, you're only safe if you grow it yourself, and then of course you have to contend with the fact that you've got airplanes flying over, dumping aluminum on top of your crops. The soil is mineral deficient anyway, and there's really no way to get around it. And you have the whole issue of contamination too. I mean, especially with organic farms, you have contamination issues. But you're right to point that out, because this is the same issue with the term natural. You can go to the store and people will see the label, and it always amazes me how people are so easily taken by the labels on the front, not the ingredient label, but just the 100% all natural pasteurized cheese flavored product. There's something not connect there.
There's so many things wrong with that statement.
So I mean, the all natural aspect, all natural ingredients. Most of those things, it should only be one ingredient, but there's a whole list on the back, but it says 100% all natural. So we're getting to that situation with organic foods, where more and more things are allowed to be called organic when they're not. And, you'll probably eventually see a day where genetically modified food can be called organic. It's just not grown with a certain level of pesticides.
Well, I've seen that argument in mainstream media and a little bit in alternative media, I have to say, because it's based on a natural thing. They started out with a real potato, but then, or a real tomato, but then they come out with this tomato that already has the statins in it. It already has the pharmaceuticals in it, so you don't have to worry about taking your drugs. You can just eat this GMO tomato and you're being force medicated. Yeah, and that's a substantial similarity, There's even talk, and this has been done with Monsanto. Monsanto tried it. They try everything. You got to give them credit for creativity, at least, which was to compare a new genetically modified strain of corn, in terms of substantial similarity, to another genetically modified form of corn that Monsanto put out. And ultimately, because of a few researchers in New Zealand, that got stopped because they actually did some science for a change. And when Monsanto was confronted with some science, Monsanto decided to pull back. Not because it wouldn't be profitable, but because they were scared they'd have to actually confront the science, and that would bring the house of cards that they've set up on genetically modified foods down. Wow. The food for me is an important subject, because I realize there's certain things we can't live without. They are destroying our water, and they're privatizing it, and they're putting all of this stuff in it. When you drink bottled water, it's not regulated, so who knows what's in it? And they're using Africa as this huge hub in order to take over as the future of food, and it's all GMO. They're killing or they're destroying all these people. But I thank you so much for coming on to my show, and I want to give you a minute to plug yourself so that people can go and read your book and listen to you on UCY.tv. So where can we find you? Well, again, I'm a staff writer for ActivistPost.com, and I have a radio show at UCY.tv. It's called Truth on the Tracks, and you can access that show's page itself at UCY.tv/TT for Truth on the Tracks. And I have a personal blog where I just repost all my articles and interview archives and so forth. It's called BrandonTurbeville.blogspot.com, and you can find my books at falseflagpublications.blogspot.com, and I have links to all those books there. Thank you. I know that you're very passionate about this as well as I am, and I know that this situation is ongoing, and Very quickly, what can people do?
Well, I would try to avoid hitting Codex head-on as an issue itself. I would look at this as an issue of trade. I would look at the head of the snake, well, not necessarily the head of the entire snake, but this specific issue as being trade issues, the World Trade Organization, and so forth. I would look at making those arguments, and I've been promoting the United Front Against Austerity, which is a new group, a coalition who have been trying to fight back against the austerity programs that are being implemented here and across the rest of the world. So I'd encourage people to check them out at againstausterity.org. Yeah.
Brandon, thank you so much for coming. Everybody go check out Brandon Tuberville activist post. Come back with us next week on the Region 10 report. Brandon, I'm going to ask you to come back because 1 hour is just not enough. And everybody have a safe week and check out the back of the label.